Hi, everyone. Today is April 21st, 2020, and today I'll be speaking with Stu Sheldon, a partner at the Chicago law firm of Stone, Pagrund, and Corey. Stu works with real estate transactions and litigation, and he brings a ton of experience to our discussion today. Chicago's in an attorney state, so all of our transactions, both buyers and sellers, have an attorney to represent them throughout the entire due diligence process. Stu effectively works with either side of the transaction, and I've had the pleasure of working with him for over a decade. Unlike the majority of real estate attorneys who are simply transactional, Stu adds additional value with his ability to anticipate legal risk and protect clients from potential litigation. The consistent feedback I get from my clients confirms that Stu's exceptional communication skills keep them both informed and feeling at ease throughout the entire process. So with that, first and foremost, Stu, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Lisa. I really appreciate you inviting me to speak with you and your clients.
Cool. There's a lot going on in the mind of home buyers and sellers. What are some of the obstacles to getting homes closed in the current environment of shelter in place that you're seeing?
Sure. So, I'd have to tell you that the entire process, although basically the same, the logistics have changed tremendously.
How so?
So, so for instance, the way we've been doing real estate closings for years is all the parties go to the closing table, we sit there, you have the title company staff, seller's attorney, buyer's attorney, both realtors, sometimes the sellers themselves. We all sit at the table, we sign documents and do the transaction that way. Nowadays, because everyone is trying to socially distance from each other and limit in-person contact, title companies are doing remote closings. They're doing curbside closings, which is typically what's done when there's a loan in the transaction. So it's really changed the dynamic at closing itself. However, the show must go on. The process continues. Buyers sign the documents, sellers sign the documents. Just we're not in the same room together anymore.
I see. So we've been hearing a lot in the news about various industries that have contracts with force majeure clauses. First off, what is a force majeure clause, and does it apply to us in real estate contracts in Chicago?
So a force majeure clause is a provision in a contract that excuses one or both parties from completing their obligations under the contract due to things like acts of God, acts of war, terrorism, natural disasters, things like this, large, unanticipated, major problems that disrupt transactions, disrupt the way people go about doing business and their ability to do business. So that's the general concept of a force majeure clause. Does a force majeure clause apply to real estate transactions in Chicago? It may. And the reason why I say it may is the typical form contracts used in the city of Chicago and in the suburbs do not have force majeure clauses in them. So, it could apply, but you have to do some work to make sure that it does apply. It doesn't apply as a matter of right.
So how do you pivot in order to protect a buyer or seller if there's no force majeure clause in the standard contracts?
So that's where the attorney comes into play. What you're going to do is during the attorney review process, which is where the attorneys suggest modifications to the contracts on behalf of their clients, both on the buyer and seller side, you're going to see attorneys adding in force majeure clauses and also probably a paragraph specifically referencing COVID-19 or the coronavirus.
I see. So what would that entail? Are you talking about delays, or what would how would that impact the contract?
Typically the way you'd see it is you'd see the parties agree to delay the transaction until they're able to act. For instance, I've seen contracts where you put a provision in and it says if one of the parties to the contract gets COVID-19, then the transaction is delayed until that party can actually participate in the closing. or there's been disruption at the municipal level. A lot of municipalities, it's hard to get transfer stamps, for instance, from certain municipalities. So that would be another provision that says, due to this pandemic, we're unable potentially to obtain transfer stamps, or in some cases, actually record the documents. In that case, the transaction is delayed until such time as the parties are able to consummate it. That's what I've been seeing generally in contracts recently.
I see, that makes sense. So at the end of the day, I guess the big question is, are closings actually still happening now? And if so, how?
Closings are still happening. People are still selling. People are still buying. The only thing that's really changed, and I touched on it before, is the logistics of getting the closing done. So we've been doing a lot of these curbside closings where the buyers are sitting in their car on the street outside of the title company. They call the closer brings their documents down, and they sit there in their car and they sign the documents while I'm available talking to them on the phone, while I'm simultaneously looking at those documents that they're signing and explaining those documents to them. And so far it's worked fine. I haven't had any complaints. Clients seem to be happy with the way the process is working. It's different, but it's working.
Great. That's good to hear. So I guess I'm wondering, I have a lot of respect for you and your opinion based upon your experience. And I'm wondering, do you feel that there will be any lasting impacts that may come up over the next few months, or maybe even longer term than that? What should we be expecting?
So I think short term, the biggest issue you're going to see is tightening of credit. So the lender review process for loans and the requirements for loans, it's going to become more stringent. I'm already seeing it. I've had closings where the lender is verifying income and employment during the closing. So this we're going to see a lot more of. I think it has the potential to adversely affect transactions, especially if buyers lose their jobs or they're furloughed or their income is reduced. That's going to affect the loan, and it very well could affect the loan at the very last minute, which then puts a lot of pressure on the parties, the sellers, the buyer, everybody. So that's I think the biggest issue we're going to see. You're also probably going to see people are worried right now. They don't know how the economy is going to go, when it's going to recover, how it's going to recover. So you may have some parties that are sitting out on the sidelines for now, just waiting a little bit to see which way things are headed before they commit to sell or commit to buy.
I see. Yeah, I agree. We do see a lot of people overwhelmed with uncertainty as well on my end of things. So it's interesting to hear how it'll impact our process down the road. I guess in closing, Stu, what recommendations would you share with the folks that are tuned into us?
So I would recommend that everybody has a good team of professionals behind them. You need a good realtor, you need a good lender, especially nowadays. You need a good attorney, and the key is having a good team, and the key is communication, both with your team and with the other side of the transaction. It's a new world for all of us. We're all adjusting, and from what I've seen, everybody's been working together to try to get the deals closed. So communication, preparation, and flexibility. We're all figuring it out as we go. So, we need to be patient with everybody in the transaction, because we all have the same common goal, which is good service and getting the deals closed.
Awesome. Great. Stu, thanks so much for sharing your knowledge and experience with us today. If anybody has any questions, can you give us some contact information? I'll also put it in the link down below, but how would you like people to reach out to you?
Sure, you can reach out to me by email. My email is ssheldon, that's ssheldon @spcklaw.com, or you can call me at 312-782-3636, extension 127.
Cool. Thank you so much. Stu, thanks so much. I hope you and your family be well and stay well. And thanks everybody for tuning in with us today. I really hope that this helps you to understand a little bit more about what's going on with real estate contracts in Chicago. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa.